What is going on, alpha males? This is a request from a patron who has dreams of going and hunting out west. And I've done many episodes on hunting, and just did one on Western hunting rifles on Gunfighter Life, another podcast just about guns. But I know guns don't apply to everybody that listens for whatever reason. If you care more about the gun stuff, go listen to that episode or any other episode on Gunfighter Life. This is the other stuff. I will mention guns in here a bit, but this is a bunch of the other stuff. And I started this as just hunting, but then I realized it really applies to more than that. Hunting, fishing, backpacking, hiking trips out west, and the vastness of being out west. It was rather lengthy, and I did it in chunks. Also did it on a different microphone. Been trying that out. I've been getting some good feedback from the audience. So this is mic number 1, and I'll put in the bio and then the actual body. Any other feedback will be appreciated at goodshepherdtraining.com. Contact me for feedback on this or just any comments. goodshepherdtraining.com. So, who am I? Who is this person talking to you from across the internet? Why should you listen? First and foremost, I am a Christian, a servant of God, and a follower of Jesus Christ. God has blessed me to do many things in my life, for I could do nothing apart from Him. U.S. Marine Corps combat veteran, did a couple of tours in Iraq. As an assaultman after my combat tours, I was an urban warfare instructor for the Marine Corps under Mojave Viper. Also served in the U.S. Army, both full-time and part-time National Guard. Also did several years in law enforcement, LAPD. I worked regular assignments and more specialized assignments. Been a private contractor for a 3-letter government agency. That's all I'll say about that. Been blessed to be a state rifle and pistol champion. And West Coast Regional Rifle Champion. Won more shooting competitions with the talent that God's given me than I can actually remember. Was blessed to be the commander of a tactical team in a large metropolitan area. Our primary job, the reason we primarily existed, was to stop active shooters. I got the opportunity to head up and be the commander of that team. I grew up around guns, hunting and shooting and competing at a very early age. Been blessed to hunt all over this beautiful country, from whitetail on the East Coast to mule deer on the West Coast, and bear and elk and all manner of things. I've even been a professional big game hunter and guide. But again, most importantly, I'm a Christian. And I am your host, Michael Melito. Welcome to the podcast. So, let's talk about Western hunting. I'm going to call him a friend. He's trying to get into hunting as an adult and didn't grow up hunting, and that can be quite the learning curve, as they say, common in today's educational system. It's quite the learning curve to be thrown into that. And he has dreams of going out west. And right now I am stuck east of the Mississippi, and I'm here because my wife wants to be near her family for a while, and I love my wife, but I have dreams about getting back to a freer existence west of the Mississippi with vast swaths of open land. And he's done some hunting east of the Mississippi. Likewise, many of you listening have, because the vast majority of the American population lives east of the Mississippi, where population density is high. To give you an idea of the difference, I'm not going to go into exact numbers, but the state that I'm in now, east of the Mississippi, Florida, has over 400 people per square mile, the stats I looked up. Verify all this for yourself by the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses. A matter is established. And Idaho has 20-something. So 400 and something compared to 20-something. Oregon had 17. Give you an idea of what we're talking about here. And before I get into the gear, so if you don't want to listen to me talk about philosophy of Western hunting, just skip forward till you start hearing gear stuff. However, I think this is more important than the gear. To grasp this, I was originally going to compare this from going from playing ping pong, but I don't think that's a fair comparison. It's more like going from playing on a postage stamp to playing on a football field. Many hunters back east may hunt a couple of acres. You may find a piece of public land that's a couple of 100 acres. In general, I know probably, in Maine or something there's exceptions. But for the most part, hunting public land, unless you're part of the landed gentry and you own like a county somewhere east of the Mississippi, most people are going to hunt small swaths of land. And you go out west, and I'm not exaggerating, I'm literally talking some of these national forests, even that individually, but sometimes they connect to each other, are millions of acres. Millions of acres. You could walk around them for months and never see a single person. To give you an idea of the size that we're talking about. Whereas back east, you may get out of your truck or get off a quad and shut your door quietly and walk 100 yards or 150 yards. You may hike for miles and miles before you even start to think about hunting to get away from what I would call civilization. Roads, electric lines, cell signal, right? To give you an idea of the vastness of the West for somebody that's never experienced it other than maybe flying over it or something. Just to give you an idea of what we're talking about is a different kind of hunting, and something I dearly love. I grew up, a poor boy in the South hunting wherever I could, and to go out west in the freedom and the beauty and just the reflection of the beauty of God's creation, a small reflection of God's beauty. Out west it's so vast where I can go look at mountains upon mountains in the distance and not see a phone line or not see a house or a light or a building. Just, it's good for the soul. Jesus often withdrew into wild places, into wilderness, into deserted places to rest a while. I think it's good and restful for the soul, whether or not I kill anything. And I like to kill beasts and eat them. I make no apologies for that. But just being out there is totally different. So I want you to start out with that frame of mind, and that will maybe put you in a better state of mind when you're setting up a gear list. Now, I'm going off this from what I know, states that I've lived in out west, and those have been Arizona, New Mexico, California, Idaho, both southern and northern Idaho. Lived in Idaho several times, several different places. Probably one of my favorites, Oregon. Did I mention Arizona? I may be leaving out a few. Nevada. Lived in Nevada quite a while, a couple of different times, both southern and northern Nevada. To give you an idea of what I'm talking about and the way that I like to hunt. I like to spot and stalk and still hunt. I don't like to hunt from a stand, which if you're from back east, that generally doesn't work out too well most places out west. And I don't like to hunt the long range, what's the new fad now, kind of the Thai bow or CrossFit or whatever the new fad is in working out version of hunting. Like I don't like to hunt with a 18-pound rifle and a giant scope and a bunch of computers and off the back of a quad. It's not how I hunt. I have spot and stalk and still hunt deep in the back country. I'm not putting any hunters down. If you want to go out and put meat on the table, any of those ways is better than probably I would submit sitting in front of Netflix and watching garbage. So I'm not putting any of that down. That's just not how I hunt. I hunt with light mobile gear, and I like to get deep in the back country and rugged country. That's mostly what I'm going to talk about. And before I get into a pack list, I did a whole other episode on guns. I may reiterate those at the end. But I'm going to start with clothing, because clothing is important. I'm going to start number one with boots. Don't go out west and buy a pair of boots and then try and go hunting in them. You need to break in your boots. You need to wear your boots. And you need to be used to covering ground. I don't care if that means you going to your gym with a pair of boots a month in advance and doing the stair stepper, doing the Jacob's ladder, walking on the treadmill on an incline, and breaking those boots in and getting used to those. But good, lightweight boots. Depending on the terrain, depending on the topography, I'm not going to hunt in northern Idaho in the same kind of boots I'm going to hunt southern Arizona in. Right? It just doesn't make sense. But a good pair of boots. And a mediocre, cheap pair of decent material boots that you've broken in and hiked in and worn in hot spots and blisters and healed, and that's going to be better than the most expensive pair of boots that you don't break in. So don't make that rookie mistake, but get a good pair of boots. I would rather see you with a really good pair of boots and a what I would call a budget rifle than a really top-end rifle and garbage boots that you haven't broken in. But anyway, let us just do your research on your boots. But once you have a good pair of boots, socks, I cannot overemphasize the importance of socks. And don't just take one pair of socks, take multiple socks. You should have a good pair of socks on. You should have another good pair of socks somewhere at the ready, at least another one. And this really depends too. I really like 100% nylon socks, real tight, and this might not make sense if you've never done it, but really tight, like I would call them dress socks, really thin, and I like those thin and tight on my feet. And then I like a bigger pair of socks if I need it for cold weather, because if I'm gonna have rubbing, and a lot of times loose things like wool socks will rub, and I'd rather have them rub on the outside of the tight sock. Pro tip I learned in the Marine Corps, rucking and humping large amounts of weights long distances, but take that and run with it if you want. But you also probably should have a really good pair of wool socks, merino wool, whatever, but a good pair of wool socks. 100% wool, don't be mixing around with the garbage, like it says it's a wool sock and you read it and it's like 20% wool. I'm talking wool socks. Spend the money on good socks. I really like, and I have several pair of 100% alpaca wool socks, if you can call alpaca hair wool. But they're good socks, and I've worn them. They're great socks. I've used them PH in a lot, professional hunting. If I use the term PH, that's what it means. So a good pair of wool socks cannot be overstated. And depending on the weather, obviously you're not going to wear the same things if you're hunting southern Arizona for big muleys as you will if you're hunting northern Idaho for elk, or Montana or Wyoming. Far, far different. But my pants pretty much stay the same. I like 100% polyester pants. I like them because they're what's called hydrophobic. They don't like to be wet in their natural state. That natural 100% polyester, not some garbage mix, not 30, 70 or 60-40 poly cotton mix. That's garbage. 100% polyester. It is hydrophobic by nature. It does not like to be wet. It doesn't like to absorb water, and when it gets wet, it likes to shed that water ASAP. So I generally, day to day, right now I'm wearing shorts because I'm in Florida, but they're the same brand, same kind. The lightweight, proper, and they're not expensive pants. I've worn them for years and years. Where I'm in a tactical situation, where I'm hunting, proper pants. I'm not big on needing camo unless you specifically are like bow hunting or turkey hunting, but just a good pair of khaki or OD green pants. 100% polyester. Now, the differences come from your underlayer. Again, if you're hunting somewhere cold, you're probably going to want some really good base layers, either 100% polyester, or you're going to want wool. Again, wool. Alright, so the wool base layer. Now let's move up to the top, because I think I'm going to differ from what I would call popular opinion here, and that's fine. You can go with popular opinion. I'm not a big fan of layers. I'm not a big fan of that for the kind of hunting that I do. And this will be different. If you're hunting, southern Arizona, you're probably not carrying a big jacket. You probably don't need it. But we're talking Idaho, places like that. What I like is a good thin wool base layer, a wool long sleeve shirt or something like it. Maybe even an Under Armour shirt kind of base layer, right? Just a thin base layer, and then I like a good proper, not proper the brand, but I like a good coat, like a good decent coat. And that's really it. I don't like a bunch of layers in between. And here's why. If I'm hiking up the side of a mountain in Idaho, Hell's Canyon area, or, Sawtooth Wilderness or whatever, it can be 30 degrees outside, and I could want to be in a t-shirt, literally, because you're hiking up the side of a mountain with a pack, right? And I can just take that jacket off and throw it on my pack, and I'm good to go. If I start to get a little bit chilly, who cares, right? I'm moving around. I can deal with being a little bit uncomfortable. I don't need to be perfectly comfortable with every 5-degree change in temperature. If I start to get really cold, I can throw the jacket on. And if I get really, really cold, like I sit down and I start to get cold, I can zip the jacket up. I don't need a bunch of different layers distracting me. I'm going to take this one off, I'm going to take that one off. Again, I like a base layer and a good proper coat. If I am just wearing that coat and I unzip it, it's pretty much an intermediate layer anyway. 2 coats I'm going to recommend. One, again, 100% polyester. It's a Midway USA brand, and I get no kickbacks from Midway USA. I have no sponsors here, but I've been through several. I think my third one of their jackets, 100% polyester. Really good. Again, hydrophobic, doesn't like to be wet. And they're lightweight, and they're very, very warm. And my wife now has one that she really likes. She doesn't hunt that much. She uses it all the time. She's in Green Bay, Wisconsin right now. I think she's going to be wearing it tonight. But it's a good, they're good jackets. And I think they're called like the Elk Ridge or Elk Slayer or Elk Stalker, something like that. They're a good coat. I wore them when I was PHing, guiding. They're fantastic. Whatever camouflage pattern you want, they're going to come in camo, and that's fine. Doesn't really matter. Pick one. If you don't shoot an animal, it's probably not because you don't have the right camo pattern. It's probably because your fieldcraft and woodsmanship is not up to par. I'm just being honest. So get one in a decent camouflage pattern that you like, or if it's on sale, and a good one of those. My other big one is going to be, I have a real legit, actual, not an imitation, bomber jacket made of lambskin and shearling. Shearling meaning like it's lamb hide with the hair still on it that's been shaved and turned inside out. Crazy warm. You talk about old school, low tech, but still awesome. That's the one. I'm talking like, it doesn't matter if it gets wet, it's still going to be warm. It's windproof, it's waterproof. It's just awesome, and it does everything. The only issue with that is it's quite a bit heavier, and it doesn't pack down as much. So if I am going to be spending most of the day hiking up mountains, I can take that polyester jacket and shove it into a pack, and it squishes down real small. The shearling bomber jacket does not squish down small. But if I'm hunting, let's say, Atlanta, Idaho in November, I assume it's going to be really cold all day, windy, snowy, and I'll just wear the jacket, and if I get a little warm, I'll unzip it, because I'm probably not getting that hot. So either one of those. And I've talked about this before, but in your jacket prep, you should have a decent pair of gloves and a hat. Even if you don't plan on wearing them, even if you have another one in your pack, keep those things and hopefully a pair of hand warmers in your jacket, because I've had it before on hunts. You drop your pack, you think, oh, I'm just going to go look around a little bit, and then you see something over there, you hear something, you go further and further, and before you know it, you're far away, and at least you have that gloves and hat in your jacket. Even if you have an extra pair or a better pair in your pack. But, again, base layer and a good, proper coat, big jacket, whatever you want to call it, parka. Also, I should mention in there, you probably want a poncho, just the cheap dollar ponchos. Now, I have a better poncho in my pack, but just one of those cheap one, or what if they're $2 now with inflation, I don't know. But just a cheap poncho in one of your pockets in your jacket. In case it does start pouring down raining, your jacket should be waterproof anyway, but it's just a lot better to have one of those ponchos to throw on. If I'm actually going to be hunting in a poncho, I'll get my actual military, spec poncho, but one of those quick easy ponchos, if it just starts downpouring, is really nice. Also, if you shoot something, they're really nice to just lay out on the ground to stop sand and dirt and stuff from getting on your meat. They can be really nice for that. They can also be really nice if they're again $2. Have a couple of them at your base camp or whatever. If you decide you want to sit down in the snow or in a really wet, nasty conditions, you can just fold it out a couple of times, not all the way, and sit on it. They're really nice for that too. So multifunctional there. Now, something I like to do when I'm going out in the backcountry, I have, I don't know what you would call it, just a little teeny accessory pouch, and I put that on my belt. I don't EDC that day to day when I'm in normal places, but when I go out in the backcountry, when I go into the wilderness, I will take it. And it's basically about the size of, both my hands with my fingers joined but flat, put together, it's about that size, to give you an idea. It's not a giant pouch. It doesn't really hinder my movement. It wouldn't stop me from doing wind sprints or going really fast up the side of a mountain. It's just an extra line of stuff. And what I like in there is a good compass. If you're going in the wilderness, you need to have a compass on you. That should just be part of it. Even if you plan on sticking to roads or whatever, have a compass. And those little tiny ones that you can put like on a jacket lanyard loop or something like that are okay. But a good proper lensatic compass, that goes in here. A space blanket, one of the survival blankets, they do work. If you've ever been trapped on the side of a mountain, in Idaho in the winter, just waiting for daylight and you're freezing, those are really nice. They do work. They're not a gimmick. Hopefully you never need it, but I've busted them out and I've used them. They work. Let's just put it that way. I have used one in that very scenario on the side of a mountain in Idaho, freezing cold, wind. They're nice to have. And they may be need to have if your life depends on it. I probably could have just turned around and went back, but I was stubborn and wanted to stay there. They are nice to have, and that, I think, belongs in this little pouch. A good compass, some water purification tablets, in addition to the ones you probably should have in your EDC, everyday carry, your belt kit. And I'm going to get to the rest of the stuff, but this is in addition to, you've probably listened for some time and know generally my everyday carry. But also in here, I will have a really sharp razor blade knife in case something should happen and I just, something happened with my other knife or something, an extra blade in here, or something happens to me and I have to cut something out of myself. That has happened more than once with me. So if you have to cut something out, I probably don't want my EDC knife. I probably want a good sealed, sterile, like surgical steel blade in there in case I need it. Nice to have. I have some extra cordage generally in there, and even if I have it in my EDC, I want an extra backup headlamp in there. You may want some other stuff in there, but that stuff is really good to have on your person. Again, you might have it in your pack, you might drop your pack, you might go falling down the side of a mountain, which I'm sad to say I have done before and almost died if it wasn't for the grace of God. And you may not have a pack anymore. You want that stuff on you. And talking about on EDC gear, you guys know I generally carry a full-size fighting handgun day to day. If I'm just going scouting in the backcountry, I will still have the same type of handgun. I have a good fixed blade knife I carry every day, EDC, in my pocket right now. And a Tops Mini Tracker is a good choice for that. Also, a White River Firecraft is really good for that. I generally EDC carry a ferro rod and some water purification tablets. And that's just day to day, every day. Even if I'm just going to the gym or something, I have that stuff in my pocket. Also some extra cordage. The only difference is if I'm going hunting in the backcountry with a rifle or a shotgun, that's my first line. So I generally will downgrade my handgun because I have a rifle or a shotgun. And I'll generally go to one of my lesser EDC options that I will still EDC sometimes. And that is going to be my J-frame. I have a 357 Magnum J-frame. 5 shots of 357 Magnum. A lot of times day to day in suburbia or in a city, I'll carry 38 Special because I can get faster follow-up shots. This is a time I like the flexibility of the 357 38 Special combo because I can load it up, and I like the solid copper monolithic 357s. They tend to penetrate well, hold their integrity, meaning they don't, break apart. For something like this, so I'm going to be in grizzly country or big bear country or who knows what, right? Then I can beef up to the 357s. I like that option. And again, this is not my first line of defense. I have a rifle, like a full powered rifle, and I have, or a shotgun with slugs and buckshot and whatever I'm hunting shot. So this is not like my only gun that I might have on me as in I'm going scouting day to day. If I'm going out scouting in the backcountry, yeah, a full-size fighting handgun. But if I have a rifle and a pack and a bunch of other stuff, I'll generally have that J-frame. And here's the other thing. If I'm carrying a full-size fighting handgun, it can be really hard to get my pack with the waist strap. And you want a pack with a waist strap around my body because I carry strong side hip. So that's kind of a no-go right there. So the J-frame, I can put it in my pocket, I can put it in my back pocket, especially if I'm hiking long distances, or a lot of the packs will have a little pouch or ability to attach a little pouch in the front of the waist strap so that I can access that gun quickly if I'm wearing a pack. And I'd rather have it quickly accessible and a little bit downgraded in capacity than have to take it off and put it in my pack, which does me almost no good. So that's my philosophy on that. Now let's talk about the pack itself. Now the pack itself is important. When I talk about backcountry adventuring, my mind generally gravitates towards hunting because I really like to do it, but also fishing or just backpacking, hiking, just going out backpack camping, any of that kind of stuff. The weight and size of the pack is important. You need enough to carry your supplies, but if you get too big, it's really going to hinder your movement. So keep that in mind. I have buddies that I dearly love but are into prepping and stuff and don't do a lot of actual backcountry stuff, and we go on little exercises, bug out exercise or whatever, and they go maybe a mile and they're literally wanting to stop because their bag is too heavy. So temper it with reality. Don't just throw it on in your living room. Like go cover some ground on it, even if it's wherever you live, right? Go cover some ground with that pack and see if it's the appropriate size and weight. Now, over the years, I've used a couple of different packs, but my go-tos for a long time, ever since I got the first one, have been Eberle stock. And again, I get no sponsors or anything, but Eberle stock makes a fantastic pack. If you're looking for a good all-around, they make one called the Just One. I don't own that one, but it's a good all-around pack. It's called the Just One. Kind of makes sense. The one that I have is the Gun Runner. I really like it. It's a bit smaller. So if you're new into this, you may want a bigger bag, but as there's kind of a saying, the more skills you have, the more skills you have, the less stuff you have to haul around, right? The Gun Runner is a light and handy pack. It is my go-to pack. It is my second of the Eberle stock packs. The first one, there's nothing wrong with it. I just got rid of it. I got this one instead, and living nomadically, I didn't need or really want to take up the space with two packs. I have this pack. It's a great pack, and that's the Eberle stock Gun Runner. But see whatever style fits you. I would advise, unless you know exactly what you're doing, going super hardcore hunting, long periods of time, don't go any bigger than the Just One. So, but Eberle stock, there's a lot of other companies that make good packs, but of all the ones that I know and have used, I like Eberle stock. So, and they're not crazy expensive. You're not talking like thousands of dollars for a pack or anything. But this is another place you really don't want to go cheap, but have a good pack. And for in that pack, two things I'm going to tell you right off the bat, and I think if you have these two things, it's better than having all the other cool Amazon stuff you can throw in there. 1 or 2 really good black plastic trash bags. Doesn't sound like a big deal. Literally could save your life and come in really handy. Multifunctional, you could cut them and make them into another tarp if you need another tarp, right? So you could just cut them flat and make them a big square. You can make them into a poncho. You can literally just get inside them. Now, don't be stupid and suffocate yourself, but it can be an emergency shelter no matter how bad the weather gets to keep you dry. And again, you could cut a hole in it or 3 holes in it and make a poncho. They can just be really handy. You can lay it on the ground if it's cold, wet ground. They literally keep you alive. Pile up some leaves, stow this on top of there, and then that can really help out, especially if you have 2, to pretty much keep you dry and safe. So it might not be the most comfortable night you've ever had, but it may just keep you alive. So the trash bag's really important. And the next thing, a giant bag of almonds. That's what I keep. Almonds, peanuts, doesn't really matter. Cashews, some kind of nut or legume. For me, you might want trail mix. If you're just going out in the backcountry and you generally eat sugar and carbs and stuff, this is probably not the time to force yourself to go, caveman keto. But generally, day to day, I don't eat carbs as a source of calories. That's just not a thing for me. And a good, handy, good source of fiber and fat and protein, and it's natural, is nuts. And I like them with salt. So almonds, peanuts, again, anything like that, I have a giant bag in there. Like as soon as you open my pack, there's a emergency medical kit, and then right underneath that, I believe there is a big, like 3-pound thing of almonds, maybe 2 pounds, something. It's a lot of almonds, and that's a lot of calories. And they're simple. I don't have to cook them. I can eat them. I don't go into the back country to like take my little stove. I don't even own a little stove. I think my wife does. I don't go there to take a little stove and make I don't know, whatever kind of fancy food is. That's not me, right? I can just grab a handful of almonds and I'm good to go. I don't have to cook them. If you're eating carbs and stuff like that, maybe the trail mix, just classic peanuts and raisins will work just fine. But high calorie dense food, and a lot of it. If you don't need it, you don't need it. And literally, if it's like peanuts, if you don't need it and you kill a big animal and you want to make room in your pack, you just dump it out, because now you have a bunch of food if something should go wrong. You might not be willing to eat raw deer meat, but I'd say after you've been hungry for a while, you will. And I've got no problem eating raw cervid meat. It's not an issue for me at all. But you can probably, even if you have no stove and you have fire starting material, which you should, you can make a fire and cook meat. But until you get the meat, you can literally just grab a big bunch of calories in seeds, nuts, something like that. They last a long time. They store well in hot and cold environments. You don't need to cook them. You don't have to overthink it. A giant bag of something like that. And that's a bulk of my pack. I may also have and do have several cans of sardines in oil. Again, high calorie, high protein, high fat. If you're going to carry sardines, get the ones in oil if it's to sustain you, because there's more calories in the same size. And again, they store well. They're in their own little sealed container. But calories and the trash bags, that's better at just having that in the pack than having a bunch of other stuff. But some other stuff you might want in there. I mentioned the emergency medical kit. I generally EDC a tourniquet, but if you don't, a tourniquet, some just wound packing gauze and basic stuff in your emergency medical kit. And I keep that right generally as soon as you open the first top flap, it's just right there. So I keep that in the pack. And then whatever mission specific stuff you want. Like if you're going hunting, obviously there's hunting specific stuff in there. If you are fishing, you're going to want a fishing rod. I did a whole episode kind of on kind of the one fishing rod that can catch most things, right? You're not going to go and catch, great white sharks, but a good medium action spin cast rod. You can catch trout in a trout stream out west. You can catch stuff in Florida. You can catch stuff pretty much anywhere. A pond in Tennessee. So a 6 foot, and if you're doing it for this, it should come apart, medium action rod strapped to the outside of your pack or inside your pack, with a good spin cast reel. If you're going on a fly fishing expedition, obviously you're going to have that stuff. But just some few basic hooks. You can improvise hooks, but trust me, hooks don't take up that much space. Even if you're not going fishing and you're not carrying a rod and reel, carry some string and some hooks if you're going anywhere that might have fish. Southern Arizona, that might be a moot point. But anywhere that may have fish, just for survival aspect, have just a basic kit in there. Another thing that's really important and often overlooked, a good sewing kit. Just a sewing kit. Because if you're out using your gear hard, it's very likely you're going to break it. And being able to repair it is important. So even if you just have the fishing string and your fishing hooks and then just a needle, and you can sew stuff up with fishing string if you have to, but a basic repair kit. And I'd mention that, but also you may want to have some duct tape anyway, and also some duct tape as part of your repair kit for shoes, for packs, for straps, whatever the case might be. An easy repair kit. You're going to want water is important. Whether you decide to carry water or procure water, that's up to you. If you're somewhere like the Pacific Northwest, which is beautiful and filled with water, you'd have a hard time not finding water there. So ways to filter water, I like the Mini Sawyer a lot, and I like it better than the Life Straw. I've used both. The Mini Sawyer is just smaller, and whatever the Life Straw says it filters out. In my experience, if you use it a couple of times and then put it away and go to use it again, it gets clogged. The Mini Sawyer is much less so. And they come with a little bag if you want to use it, but just the Mini Sawyer, they're smaller, they're handier in my opinion, and they last longer. Mini Sawyers, and they're not expensive. and 2 ways to get water. At least that and some water purification tabs. Again, those are part of my EDC anyway. They're attached generally to my EDC knife. But good ways to procure water, that's important. If you're going somewhere that doesn't have a lot of water, you're going to have to carry water. And water is heavy, so keep that in mind. The water bladders, the Camelbacks and things like that can be okay. I generally don't like them because a lot of times I'll just drink out of boredom and then I will have drank a bunch of water. I like bottles better, and I know people love those packs or whatnot, but unless you can get as much water as you want, if it's dry country, I don't like them because I'll find myself drinking too much water and then running out. So I like bottles because I can ration it. I can say, I haven't drank a bottle of water in 2 hours, I should probably drink one. But just bottles of water, and I like a metal container. If you're not going to have a metal water bottle, at least have a metal cup to boil water and to maybe do some cooking in. If you catch some small game, small amounts of meat, you want to just throw it in some water and make a broth, a little bit of salt. It's a good way. A good metal container you should have. Even if you don't think you're going to use it, they don't take up that much space and weight. A good metal container can really come in handy for a lot of things, but especially for water. So keep an eye on water procurement. Don't overlook it. Don't just assume unless it's somewhere like, the Pacific Northwest. All right, so some redundancy. Have some fire starting stuff in your pack. Have some on your body for sure. Maybe have some that little side pouch I told you about on your belt or somewhere. And then have some in your pack in case something should happen, right? The one in your pocket, you wade a little bit too far in a creek, been there, stuff in your pocket gets wet, you have one in your pack. Or you lose your pack and you got one in your pocket. You get the idea. Don't mess around. Have some redundancy when it comes to survival stuff. The compass, the direction finding, the fire, the knife, the blade, things like that have some redundancy. Back into the pack, when it comes to shelter, I don't generally carry a tent. Now again, mission specific. If you're going out there, like if I'm doing Sukkot and I'm going to live out in the wilderness or live somewhere for a week without any other infrastructure, then yeah, take a tent. But in general, what I carry in my pack is I carry a poncho and a poncho liner, or a poncho and a whoopee, whatever you want to say, whether you're in the Marine Corps or the Army. I did both, so I guess I can use both. A poncho and a poncho liner / whoopee. It's amazing the versatility of that system. I'd store some 550 cord parachute cord with that and just in your pack in general. And also what I really like and use a lot in the Pacific Northwest is the jute or manila cordage. It's cheap. It's not as strong as 550 cord, but it's cheap, it's biodegradable, and it lights on fire really easy, which comes in handy if you're trying to find tinder and everything around you is wet. It's also nice because it's biodegradable, so if you throw a little bit of it up in a tree to make a really high shelter and you can't climb the tree to get out, it's biodegradable. It'll be fine. It'll rot away fairly easily, and it's cheap, so you can use a bunch of it if you're trying to make a shelter. But again, the more knowledge you have, you can make a ton of different shelters out of a poncho liner, and if you have that trash bag or two in there, if the ground is really nasty, you just lay that down. If you know how to, dig a trench around your little shelter so that if it rains, the water bypasses you. Things like that. But a poncho and a poncho liner, it's light, it's handy. Even if I don't plan on spending a night out in the wilderness, it's a good thing to have. And again, you can do a lot. Would I, go hunting muskox and, the Arctic Circle with that? No, I wouldn't. But for a lot of things, making shade, keeping you dry, and if you're dressed appropriate for the climate, a poncho liner goes a long way. If you're injured or something, really injured, you're probably not setting up a tent depending on how injured and how well you can think, because being severely injured, I speak from experience, can really hinder how much you can think. You can literally just roll up in that. Just grab it and roll up into it with the poncho on the inside and the poncho liner on the outside and get somewhere relatively dry under a cedar tree or something, and it again may just keep you alive. It may be that important. But a poncho and a poncho liner, anything from comfort to legit survival, I think it belongs in there. My wife and I, she has like a little ultralight, I call it an ultralight, really light, like backpacking tent that we can both fit in, and it works. I also have a much bigger tent, again, if I'm doing that mission specific, but again, I generally don't go out there for creature comforts like a nice stove and things like that. I mentioned the nuts or legumes with salt. Salt is important, so if you don't have something like that, have salt in your pack. And a lot of times just those little packets that come in the ramen noodles. And now I don't eat ramen noodles because I talked about carbs earlier, but those little salt packets are definitely worth the 20-something cents. It's a good thing to have, especially if you're talking about, well, just anywhere, but especially in like the Southwest desert climates. Your body needs salt. A lot of Americans may get too much salt because they eat processed foods, but if you spend time living off the land, you're going to want salt, trust me. So salt is important. Have a little bit of salt in there. If it has some other seasoning in it, like a bouillon cube, that's fine too. I mentioned the cordage, the 550 cord. You may want to beef it up with some rope if you want that. Also some metal wire for repairs. I mentioned the sewing kit, but sometimes you may want something beefier for repairs. And just that simple, baling wire, snare wire can come in really handy, especially if you know how to actually make snares. That can be really nice. And I mentioned the fishing line. So you got a bunch of different cordages there. And here's something often overlooked. The spare socks. You need spare socks. Almost as much as you need anything else in that pack. Spare socks. And then a spare pair of shoes. In general, if you're talking being out in the wilderness, you're probably going to have boots. But have a lighter, if you don't have an entire backup pair of boots, which can be quite heavy, you want a spare pair of footwear of some kind. It could literally be Crocs. Okay? It could be an old pair of tennis shoes. It could be water shoes if you're in the Pacific Northwest. There may come a time where you want to wade a creek or something, and you want to keep your boots dry, so you literally just deal with the cold, roll your pants up, and throw your boots over your shoulders or over your pack with a carabiner or something, and you put on your water shoes or your Crocs and wade across a creek. If that doesn't apply, you may get to a point like in Idaho where you've gone through the rough terrain and you're up on a ridge line, and the walking is going to be relatively not a lot of elevation change, and you want your boots to air out, and you can just put on literally a pair of tennis shoes and give your feet a break from those boots for a while. And if your boots get super soaked or freezing, literally they get cold and then freeze, having a spare pair of footwear can really be important. So don't overlook that. Make sure that you have a spare pair of footwear. They're also nice for when you're done doing whatever you're doing for the day, and you can just slip them on and give your feet a break from those boots. And again, there is a myriad of other things that you can do and have in your pack. I've done many episodes on talking about like a bailout bag and the mini bug out bag and things. I want this to apply to more than just hunting, but if you're talking about hunting, if I'm going out to literally live off the land, which is something I like to do, there's no rival for the shotgun. I don't care what anybody says. The 22 maybe is a second place, but the shotgun really. If I want to feed myself a Bible and a shotgun, put me in the wilderness by God's grace, and good to go. With God's provision, of course. But a shotgun, the most versatile. I can hunt anything from a mourning dove and take out a grizzly bear. It's the most versatile. And yeah, you can't carry as much ammo with a 22, but unless you're planning on spending years in the backcountry, you can probably carry enough ammo. So I like the shotgun for that. If you want the 22, or if you're primarily packing just from one place to another and you may end up out there and you want a lighter option, then yeah, the 22, like a 22 takedown, or even a little single shot. I have a little single shot 22 Savage Rascal. It's super light. I want to say 2 pounds and something. That should probably be in there with some ammo. Again, if you're not going out there to literally live off the land, but you may have to, a little 22 might come in handy. So you got that. If you're talking about Western hunting, I did a whole episode on gunfighter life. I plan on airing this on Alpha Male Podcast. If you're into guns and gunfighting, you may want to go check that out. But literally did a whole episode on that. But to recap, if you're going Western hunting, my top pick for pretty much anything south of Alaska is a Kimber Mountain Ascent in 280 Ackley Improved. Choose whatever you want, but if you wanted me to pick one rifle for pretty much anybody that was a good choice, I would pick a Kimber Mountain Ascent for a lot of reasons, and you can go listen to other podcasts for that, in 280 Ackley Improved. If you wanted a more common round, you might go 30-06, but a great choice. Put a Leupold VX Freedom. They're affordable, they're rugged. If you want something better or more expensive, I wouldn't even say better on there, you can do that too. But a good solid choice. If you want a more affordable option, get a Savage Axis and 308 or 30-06, and a lot of them come with the scope. They're very affordable. So there you go on that. As far as knives, I mentioned your EDC, and I think especially for this, a good fixed blade knife. And I generally like to keep that fixed blade knife sharp, right? Because I don't know. That's kind of my go-to day-to-day. It's like there may be times where that's better of an option than a tactical reload or a speed reload where I just grab the knife. And for getting people off of me, for getting out of a burning car, who knows what. But I want that knife sharp to the point where my wife kind of knows now, like, you don't mess with the EDC carry knives. I give her a specific knife and I say, here you go. You can cut anything you want with this knife, but not these knives. I like my EDC knives sharp. Same thing in the backcountry. Now, if that's all I have for whatever reason, I've lost my pack, then yeah, I'll use my EDC knife for whatever. But I carry I usually carry other options for butchering. And the Havalon knives, there is also the Outdoor Edge. I have both. I prefer the Havalon. They are light and handy. They don't take up much weight. You can have the knife and several other blades. And the reason for that, yes, you can be very judicious with your cuts and do the gutless method and really avoid cutting hair, which dulls knives, and do the whole thing with one knife. And if you're going to do that, the Buck 110 Slim is a great choice. It's not heavy either, and it's a good beefy knife if you want it in your pack as a backup EDC knife. But even so, I'd probably carry a Havalon, the Havalon Piranha. They're so cheap and easy and light. And yeah, you can sharpen your knife out in the field, but if you're butchering an elk or something on the side of a mountain, having those changeable blades, you know, I'm not a Luddite. I don't hate technology when it can help me. And those changeable blades, super sharp razor blade knives can come in super handy. So having one of those, especially if you're planning on fishing or hunting and procuring your own food out there, they come in really handy, and they don't weigh a ton, and they're crazy sharp. And when they get dull, you put a piece of tape or something on the blade so you don't cut yourself, and put a new blade on it, and just throw the old one away when you get somewhere safe to throw it away. But what a good thing to have in there as far as blades. You may want a beefier blade. You may want to take a hatchet. I've talked about maybe a go-to hatchet before, but a good hatchet goes a long way if you think you're going to use it and need it. I honestly don't generally take those if it's a hunting exclusive expedition, but if you're going to trailblaze or something, a good hatchet or a kukri or a machete, depending on terrain, you may want a more utilitarian blade for that. Kind of one of my go-tos that'll pretty much do everything. It's kind of like a Swiss Army knife of big blades, is a full-size Tops Tracker. I actually keep one kind of in the center between my driver's seat and passenger seat of my vehicle, and it a lot of times will go with me even if I'm not taking a pack. But a full-size Tops Tracker knife, I don't think they're a gimmick. I've used them extensively. I really like the blade shape and contour, good for a lot of things. Anyway, those are my thoughts on Western adventure gear, Western hunting gear, backcountry, wilderness gear. I want it to apply to more than just hunting, but that's what I love to do, especially in remote areas. So that's my take on it. I may have forgot one or two things. I may do an amendment. I don't know. But there's my thoughts on a backcountry hunting / adventure gear list. And so, in thinking about this, yes, Amendment 1, subsection A. I generally EDC carry a flashlight, but you can lose those. That time I fell down a mountain, and it was more like a literal cliff, was because I lost my EDC flashlight. A lot more things can get snagged and pull things out of your pockets generally out in the wilderness than day to day. And I lost my flashlight, and I was wandering around in the wilderness, and I literally walked off the edge of a cliff and almost died if it wasn't for the grace of God. Even if you EDC carry a flashlight, which I suggest, have another flashlight on you somewhere. I mentioned that little pouch, but have it attached to your body somehow or deep in a pocket. Just a cheap headlamp, something, another source of light. Also, Amendment 1, subsection B. And this is important. It normally stays in my pack, but I didn't mention this, and I should. When I go hiking in the backcountry, I'll take my GPS and I will attach it to my belt with some kind of lanyard or something if I take a spill hopefully the GPS is still there and still working. I use what's called a Bushnell Backtrack a lot. It's like the size of a hockey puck. The way it works, when you get out of wherever your camp, wherever you're staying, wherever you want to get back to, the last place you saw a road, it'll mark up the 3 locations. You mark it on the GPS. And then wherever you go, wherever you end up, you get lost, it gets foggy, you get turned around, it will give you turn it on, it'll give you the direction and distance to that last place or the place you want to go. And I cannot tell you, by God's grace, how many times that has saved me out in the wilderness. Being lost out in the woods at night is no fun. Being out in the woods at night can be quite fun. Being lost in them is a different story. So, those 2 amendments are important. Also, Amendment 2, subsection A, a multi-tool. I forgot to mention that, but if you're taking a big pack, a multi-tool can come in handy for a lot of things. Leathermans are really nice. Gerbers, in my opinion, are probably the best value in them. If you just get a little tiny, like compact multi-tool, a Leatherman Micra or something, a very small multi-tool can come in quite handy. Anyway, some amendments. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you got $5 worth of value out of not just this episode, but the podcast, I hope you'll consider supporting. There should be a Patreon link in the show notes. Also, if you go to goodshepherdtraining.com, there's some other cool stuff on there. With that, I'm going to throw in the tactical verse of the day. God blessed them and said to them, "Be fruitful and increase in number. Fill the earth and subdue it. Rule over the fish of the sea and the birds in the sky and over every living creature that moves on the ground." That's Genesis chapter 1. You are made in the image of God. Rule over your environment. Anyway, with that, I'm going to wish you a blessed day. If you think I left something out, or maybe I did actually leave something out that I usually take, or you want to tell me about one of your cool backcountry adventures, or whatever the case might be, if you want to contact me, goodshepherdtraining.com.